But just going back to the Cian Lynch debate, like Cian Lynch is going to be a 2-time hurler of the year, and he's 25.
Yeah.
The other 2-time hurler of the years are Brian Whelan, DJ Carey, and Brian Corcoran, and Henry Shefflin is out on his own with 3. Shefflin's last hurler of the year was in 2012 in his early 30s. Cian Lynch is 25. And I put it this way. You asked, could he go down as the GOAT? Limerick to me are going to win 2 of the next 3 All-Irelands. Minimum in my opinion. And that could be the next 2 All-Irelands, or they could win the next 3. But I'm just saying, I think they'll win 2 of the next 3, in no particular order. So he's on the best team in the country and a team that looks like dominating for another couple of years. He's their really key player in the sense that everything goes through him. Like, there's a distinct possibility that he could be crowned Hurler of the Year again within the next 3 years. His age profile would suggest that. The form he's in would suggest that. The fact that he's a non-drinker definitely helps. The fact that he's not going to go off the rails.
I mean this in the best possible way. The opposite of Cian Lynch, he is a flashy type player. But he's not just flash. There's massive substance under it. So I'm almost saying it as it is a positive there. You mentioned Henry Shefflin, right? So he was born in 1979. He won his first Hurler of the Year in 2002. So he was 23. Then he won it again in 2006. So he's probably 26 at that stage, if my maths add up. Actually, maybe he'd gone 27 if he was born in 1979. And then you mentioned again 6 years later in 2012. Now, we know that for the next number of years in the Hurling Championship, the opposite 3, Cork more or less decommissioned themselves as a top weapon for a few years there. Tipperary were a little bit off it. Waterford, maybe because of their long drought in All-Ireland territory and coming through Munster, it was more difficult for them to make the breakthrough. Obviously, Leinster was a wasteland for Kilkenny there for years. So there's a big opportunity for Kilkenny lads to rack up the Hurlers of the Year, like Owen Larkin, Tommy Walsh, Michael Fennelly obviously won it, and Henry won it a few times, and JJ Delaney. But I wonder, is it going to be the case that the opposition that Limerick are going to face in the next few years are going to present as poor a challenge as maybe some of those teams did in the noughties?
Potentially, because you looked at like Cork going into the final this year, and you definitely did, and many other people did, thought that they were going to pose a big challenge, and they obviously, they were steamrolled in the final, and the psychological effects of that will be seen next season and probably over the next couple of seasons. But you'd imagine their growth has been stunted a small bit as a result of that. Waterford are the next best team. We both have said they're the next best team. They haven't won Munster. They haven't won a league in a couple of years. They haven't, they've no silverware of any note. And Limerick have beaten them by 4 points in a Munster final, 11 points in an All-Ireland final, and 11 points in an All-Ireland semi-final. So, Tipperary were the closest to them this year, 5 points away, but were probably blown away in the second half. So you are looking at that there is a bit of a chasm between them and the chasing pack. It's like that time they said about when I think it was it Eclipse, when Eclipse won some big race, it was like Eclipse first, the rest nowhere. And that's kind of where Limerick are. There's that big of a gap between them and the chasing pack. So there's definitely, back to the Cian Lynch debate, there's definitely a serious opportunity. Like, he could have 3 Hurlers of the Year by 2023 or 2024 easily, and he could still have another 4 or 5 years left in his county career.
Yeah, realistically, he's got, like a lot of players now, they're kind of approaching being done at the age of 31, 30, the odd lad even 29 now. But I wonder, like, when you look at the S&C level of some of these Limerick lads, are they more approaching, like, I'm not going to say quite at a professional level, because they're going to have their day jobs, which will make that be impossible to do. But you look at, and I mentioned this before, the Euro 2020 obviously played in 21 captains. 1/3 of the captains were aged 35 and older. So obviously that's a big difference we're seeing with professional players. They're able to look after themselves better and maintain better and play for much longer. What age will Cian Lynch be playing up to? Does he have another 5 chances where he's at the the top of his health, physicality wise, where he can kind of push for a Hurler of the Year, or will it be 7 or 8 years more? So if Limerick continue on this dominant run, there's every chance that he'll do what we're talking about here. And that then, like, if he goes ahead of Henry Shefflin, will that make him the GOAT? And that's a question I throw out to everyone out there. Or does he need to win 11 All-Stars, we need to win
yeah.
10 All-Irelands. What will it require for Cian Lynch to become the GOAT? I'd love to get a few comments in about that.
But just on that, like, just say he does win another Hurler of the Year. Like, we're taking it for granted that he wins Hurler of the Year this year. If he doesn't, it's an absolute farce.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were going to say we're taking it for granted he's going to win it again another season. He probably will.
I definitely wouldn't be ruling it out at this stage. Like, he could have just say he has Hurler of the Year in 2 years' time. So he'd have one in 18, 21, and we'd say 23. And just say he finishes up in 2026 or something like that at the age of 30. He'll have 3 hurlers of the year. He won't have maybe the same volume done as Shefflin, but he'll still have 3 hurlers of the year. Look at all the greats that we've seen in recent years that only have 1 hurler of the year. TJ Reid, Seamus Callanan, Richie Hogan, Tony Kelly, Joe Canning. Do you know what I mean? He's already going to have 2, and like, it's not far-fetched to say the best of his career is still to come. As you were talking there, I was only thinking as well, what's going to be really interesting when he's coming to the latter stages of his Limerick career, I've talked about this before, how skillful he is. His legs will have slowed down a bit, but it'll be interesting to see what role and what way hurling has evolved by then. He'd still have everything in the wrist. He'd still have that speed of thought. So it'll be interesting to see whether, will he be midfield? Will he go back in corner forward? Will he play some sort of a free role? It's going to be interesting to see. Yeah, maybe. When his legs slow down, it'll be really interesting to see where he goes. And
just even looking at the last, we'll say 10 hurlers a year. I'll go back to 2011, like Michael Fennelly. Like, where does he rank in terms of these hurlers of the year? Do you know what? I'm going to go back to Lara in 2010. But where does he rank in terms of these hurlers of the year? Get your comments in. So we obviously have Lara in 2010. Michael Fennelly 2011 was absolutely brilliant. So was Shefflin in 2012. I mean, he turned around the drawn All-Ireland final and the replay, of course. Tony Kelly 2013, thrilling. Richie Hogan was unreal in 2014, even though I think he was taken off in the replay against Tipperary, but he'd still done so much that season. He deserved it. TJ Reid in 2015. Ozzie Gleeson won it in 2016. Now, he did some class things, but it really should have been Seamus Callanan or Paddy Maher that year. I think most people would say that. Some won't, but comment and tell me why I'm wrong. Joe Canning, 17, I thought was Pádraig Mannion that year, but I do think Canning was unbelievable in 2018 when Lynch deservedly won it. Then Callanan, 19, and Groat Hegarty won it last year. Fairly unanimously, but I would have felt it was Tom Morrissey. Where does Cian Lynch's 2021 season, assuming he wins it, fit into that list?
Yeah, it's like, looking back at those seasons, I probably, like, Henry was the one in 12 that was the most kind of defiant almost. There was a big statement made when it needed to be made in the final. So whereas Cian Lynch was just this really, it wasn't even consistent graph. It was just raising and raising the whole way throughout the season. Whereas Henry, I remember bits of 12. It was really that drawn All-Ireland final performance where he literally just pulled them up from the ashes. I don't remember much of that the rest of that 2012 season. As you said,
I remember I'm pretty sure he scored a goal in the Leinster final when they got hammered. Whoever they played in the semi-final, I can't remember who they played in the semi-final in Leinster that year. All-Ireland semi-final, I can't remember.
They played Limerick in an All-Ireland quarter-final, actually. That was when TJ had that conversation with him about potentially dropping off the squad, and then he ended up as an All-Star that year, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember that Shefflin scored a goal, or maybe 2 in that game, but I feel like he wasn't moving brilliantly that day. Maybe he was on the back of an injury, because obviously, he went through a few seasons there where in the off-season he had very serious surgeries, whether it was his shoulders and his knees or whatever it was. Then semi-final against Tipperary, one thing I remember was him doing this beautiful long-range, must have been 15-yard hand pass over the top to put in Larkin or TJ Reid? I can't remember who, but it was fantastic. And then, like, first half of the game against Galway, Fergal Moore had him completely tied up. But then from the second half and then obviously the replay, he was really, really good. Tony Kelly, I actually thought Podge Collins was Hurler of the Year all the way up until the replay for the All-Ireland that year. Whereas Cian Lynch has looked Hurler of the Year basically all year this year. 2018, I don't think it was a done deal that he would be Hurler of the Year. Callanan, was it a done deal with Callanan 2 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Goal in every game, and was just outstanding the whole way through. Yeah, in fairness. Yeah. I think that was kind of sewn up if he did a good final performance. It was never going to be, it didn't look like it was going to be anyone from Kilkenny to win Hurler of the Year. And in fairness, he was probably, he was the best of the tip lads.
Yeah, I think Michael Fennelly was a very dominant Hurler of the Year in 2011 because after watching him in the first game, I put money down for him to win Hurler of the Year, and he went ahead.
That's the classic That's the classic. If Tip lose, I'm going to have a little saver here to try and save face. Funny you should say it about the 2013 Hurler of the Year. Brian Murphy from Cork decided the Hurler of the Year that year. He marked Tony Kelly the first day and kept him quiet. And Podge went to town, and then he marked Podge in the replay and kept him quiet. And Tony didn't go to town, but he was better than he was the first day. So no more than Tom Morrissey taking it off. Probably Tom Morrissey taking it off Tom Morrissey last year. Brian Murphy probably took it off Podge in 2013.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think who would have had the most dominant season there. I'd say it's probably between. Like Larry Corbett, I don't think that was this. I actually thought Brendan Maher was Hurler of the Year that year. He won the Young Hurler of the Year. You'll say, of course, you'd say that because he's from Borrisley. But I did genuinely think he was. But Larry obviously got the hat trick, and then he'd scored against Limerick as well. Done a nice bit of scoring that day. Even though don't think he was on the ball that much, but when he was putting in the back of the net.
7 touches, I think, that day. Yeah,
that was it, wasn't it? It was something mad like that. Yeah, so I'd probably put it up between Michael Fennelly in 2011, Callan in 19, of course, and Cian Lynch in 21.
I think that's fair enough because they're the most unanimous hurlers of the year that I can remember in within that time. Like, it's not even up for debate who wins Hurler of the Year this year. It probably was it was up for debate a bit in 11 and a bit in 19. It could well be the most dominant Hurler of the Year in the last 10 to 11 years.
And the players who vote, they'll be a disgrace if they don't get it, won't they?
Well, imagine there was some sort of, Sean Finn and Kyle Hayes going lobbying for votes around their Limerick panel and lads they went to college with from other counties and this kind of crack.
If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com